Alright, now back to the Nefarious space station after I did a bit of a cleanup in order to get some things. But there is one last thing that we need to get here for completion's sake. Again, I'm kind of breaking a bit of a trend, but you'll see why. Especially because you're entering from a different, place for the sake of you having technically a final dungeon. Yeah, this is technically considered the final dungeon now. And compared to ones from previous games, it's actually shorter and a bit more streamlined. I guess they want to imply that, your first trip was the first part of it. I don't know.
Alright, time to see the epic conclusion to the finality of the Ratchet and Clank series that they had planned.
Yeah, end of the timeline and all other puns. I'm sorry, unfortunately I'm not the writer of a movie in time, so I don't know how to do those.
Which had more time puns? That or Timeline, I wonder?
Timeline not that much, I argue, especially because it was more centered around having a time machine doing stuff, transporting from a pier to another. While In Time was all about instead, oh, look, Mark is actually doing something. While In Time was actually instead about how characters' longevity was influenced by their physical condition, if the time was just, their expiration date, basically. It's not that much different than, say, the first World Ends With You would have to say with, the characters' countdowns on their wrists.
How was In Time a good movie?
I'm afraid not, Joe. Again, it's entertaining, and I argue technically a bit better than Stephanie Meyer's The Host, but, that's only because it's not based on a Stephanie Meyer novel, which,
I was about to say, that's an interesting thing, comparing it to a Stephanie Meyer property. What the heck?
Same director, as we mentioned, the guy who made also stuff like, directed stuff like The Truman Show and Gattaca, instead.
So, did he direct that before or after The Host?
Time was before The Host, but not that much. I think it was 2011, while The Host 2013. So,
I'm surprised I did not hear about that movie. At least I don't recall.
I don't remember the marketing that much of that for my country as well. I only knew it because people made a couple of reviews when it came out, but that's it.
It may just not have been on my radar. Probably worth a look at some point.
Also, I'm sad to say, but it's not one good, pedigree spot on Justin Timberlake's resume as an actor. He's capable of better, but he's not his A game. Mm-hmm. He's not an action star, I will say that.
I mean, with dialogue like that,
even
Cillian Murphy was struggling.
Damn, really?
Yeah.
I mean, when half the dialogue is time points, anyone would struggle.
I will say this, of music, of musicians that try to transfer over to acting, Justin Timberlake is definitely one of the more positive standouts, it seems, in terms of, having a better acting track record. He was surprisingly very good as Boo Boo in the Yogi Bear movie, of all things.
Then again, I will say that instead it was only the least of that movie's problem because, as we've said, even a good performance cannot save from a bad script. Honestly, I'm trying to think, aside from Madonna, I cannot think of that many other examples of musician trying to get through a career star.
Hey, remember Will.i.am's big debut cinema?
Oh right, with X-Men Origins Wolverine.
I mean, to be fair, he wasn't that bad.
No.
Also, yeah. No. To his credit, especially given the movie he was in, he was, dare I say, one of the better things of that movie.
No, I think, okay, honestly, I think the worst actor in that was the guy who they used to play Blob for obvious reasons. Anyway, we found all the components for the Rhino. 5 parts, so that means we can actually go back to the smuggler to actually assemble the weapon. Again, I'm getting it before the extra part just for the sake of showcasing it, how it works and all. Especially because the final boss tends to be surprisingly resistant to the Rhino.
Of course.
Galactic authorities would throw us both in Zordoom just for looking at it. Now stand back.
I mean, it's not the first time Ratchet has been in prison, so...
I present to you...
He once spent a whole video game in prison. I guess you can say 2 if we're counting both Deadlocked and its Secret Agent Clank.
So, okay, the Rhino 5, it's a bit bulkier and it was all over the marketing of this game for one specific reason.
Simply put, this is
Why did the Combos have a promotional video of it?
There's only one strategy with this one.
Again, I'm convinced at this point that they are strictly marketing this to Ratchet and Clank themselves, since they know they're the only ones with enough bolts to pay.
So here's the thing, this marks the start of a relatively short, because it's not kept consistently, series of rhinos that have their own theme music when you actually shoot them. In this case, the 1812 Tchaikovsky suite, because V for Vendetta had been released not too long since this movie.
Get it? Because Tchaikovsky once used cannons!
And the smuggler is not even phased by that, god damn. Why can't they do the Molly backswings of Spyro and shoot him?
I guess because we're actually supposed to kind of like this guy as opposed to Moneybags.
I mean, he's not the worst character I've ever seen, but he's still kind of an asshole.
Again, you have to study to be as bad as Moneybags was. Like, Moneybags was legit helping the bad guys at some point.
Alright, time to deal with Nefarious.
Step away from the transport.
You? How is this possible? You should be dead!
On behalf of galactic authorities, we hereby charge you with willful
Clank.
disruption of...
You have no authority!
Shut down the
Actually,
transport
we do
and surrender
technically,
quietly.
as of the third game.
Free for the first time in years, inches from your destiny, and what do? Run right back to playing backpack to us, Squishy. You're nothing but a pathetic sidekick.
We should hang out sometime.
I agree, Lawrence should hang around sometime.
I like how Lawrence is
That was
saying
my
his-
job talking to Clank like that before I got matured. Then I dematured and then I rematured again.
When I'm finished killing you, I think I'll rewind time. So I can do it again. And again.
Oh boy, Joker mentality.
Yeah, bro, okay, have you actually read the King Joker storyline, Drova?
Emperor Joker,
Emperor
and
Joker.
yes, Yep, I even have the trade for that. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, Dweebs, just quick rundown. Have you seen the Superman animated series?
Seen the first episode.
Okay, so you don't know who Mr. Mispitzlik is supposed to be. It's a bit of a problem. Let me just explain in the meantime the battle. Nefarious is just as much of a bitch as he was in the first game, and this time the extra, hard part is the fact that the station itself limits the arena, and occasionally, after the defeat deals so much damage, you're supposed to actually instead do this: run away from the heat laser, which is, as you can imagine, is not particularly easy to do, as you'll be able to see. Okay, just to make a quick long story short, too late. Mr. Mispitzlik is supposed to be an imp from a different dimension, the 5th dimension specifically, and because he is from that plane of existence, he has the equivalent of godlike powers in comparison to us, a little reality manipulation. So he's kind of a match for Superman because, you can just turn, his heat laser into snowflakes, that's kind of a problem. But he's never outright a sadistic villain, he just loves to fuck around because, he gets bored and wants to be entertained. So what happens in a storyline where the Joker gets his powers? Yeah.
Oh boy. Batman Brave and the Bold actually even did an adaptation of it in one of their episodes.
Yeah. Oh wait, for that was straight adaptation was just referencing it.
Okay. It was an adaptation, except instead of, Superman's usual stooge, it was Batmite. And Batmite accidentally gave Joker his powers. Yeah. But yeah, basically when Joker gets his powers, he absolutely runs absolute rampage on the world, essentially. Turning it topsy-turvy, essentially making the heroes into villains and the villains into the heroes, essentially. Until he eventually gets bored and decides, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and destroy the whole world, turning it into stars, turning it literally inside out, essentially. And, oh, by the way, he, of course, took advantage of that to finally defeat Batman. But, it being the Joker, well, they did a special spin on it. Oh yes, he wanted to kill Batman, but he would do it again, and again, and again, and again, to the point where he actually drove Batman mad, essentially. It was so bad that Superman had to literally take Batman's trauma and transplant it into the Joker after the story afterwards. I think Batman's memory even had to be wiped of that stuff just because he was that messed up from it. Whereas admittedly in the Brave and the Bold version, essentially, Joker does kill Batman over and over again, but Batman somehow manages to maintain his sanity and trick Joker into going into his mind, which was, well, a recipe for disaster on the Joker's part, basically.
It's mostly because, Brave and the Bold is supposed to be more comedic in tone in general, as a love letter to the Silver Age.
I will give it credit, though. It could legit get dark at times. Like, Brave and the Bold is kind of, well, okay, it's obviously meant to be a nice reference to the 60s series, while also being a reference to the Silver Age, but it does go relatively modern in some places here and there, too.
Especially because it features characters like the Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle, for example.
And while it sadly did get cancelled after 3 seasons, it actually got to properly end on its own terms for the most part. It might be because the creators opted to do that when they knew they were getting canned.
That just showcased to me the movie crossover that he had with the Scooby-Doo, and it wasn't particularly bad.
Oh yeah, I remember that one being pretty fun. If I recall correctly, that might have been the Mystery Incorporated version of the characters for Scooby-Doo, say. Scooby-Doo also did feature in an episode of Brave and the Bold as well, which was a nice reference to those old Hanna-Barbera crossovers between Scooby-Doo.
Last phase is on the spaceship, the small spaceship that Lawrence is piloting, meaning that yes, Lawrence is also doing something more active during the final fight.
Nice.
Again, it really contributes to the whole sense of finality, and you can kind of tell they wanted this really to be the final super encounter with the Nefarious. I will give them stand still for 1 second.
I will give them credit that yes, while story-wise it doesn't feel the most final, this definitely just feels like an epic final battle worthy of the end of the series, especially with the fact that it's now literally 2-on-2. Ratchet and Clank versus Nefarious and Lawrence. Oh, it's even really signified that Lawrence, I guess, is Clank's counterpart, where he even mentions that he should hang out with Clank somewhat. I guess as maybe a sidekick support group of sorts.
Basically.
Jesus Christ, is that enough DACA for the screen?
No, we need more. To be fair, again, it's really his old school mentality, because even in classic Doom, the BFG was all about that. Just produced a single bullet which turned the entire screen green and everything dies.
Pretty much. Which really does speak to how resilient Nefarious is, holy cow.
Titanium body or some shit like that.
And remember, this all happened by accident. Like a freak accident gave him incredibly impervious skin.
In the third game, even if we defeated him, his body did not sustain particular injuries. So...
No. At most, we just knocked him out. It wasn't like, we shredded him up. Which really does make you wonder how durable is this guy.
One more Groovytron for the road.
Yes. Beautiful. Shame Lawrence seems to be impervious to it, though.
Ow. Okay.
He's seen better days.
Disengage the autopilot! Oh, come on! Snap out of it!
Wow, we actually did it. We knocked the sanity out of him.
We just need to find
So was this the?
And
was
that's
this,
Lawrence away from the game.
was this the part? Was this the part of development where they went crazy?
heck of a ride.
But of course, we need the whole I'm not coming, you know, for the climax, except I'm coming to save the day for Asimov.
Yep.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Parallel. I'm sure Quark is gonna be fine.
Oh, please. He survived in another of Nefarious' ship blowing up.
We need to.
He's
We
resourceful.
have more important matters at hand.
I can't talk you out of this, can I? Ratchet, we have been on many adventures, but the clock needs someone to protect it. It is what I was built for.
It really is the end of the line for these two.
They are not ripped apart. We'll also do something like this.
So that's it? What about the Lombaxes?
They're not in danger. They've just moved on. And we'll find them.
I mean, you can still try to fix the Dimensionator. I know that it's
Yeah.
a dangerous weapon and everything, but it's a better shot at doing nothing.
You're a sidekick. You
Like, the
know-
Dimensionator is still technically around.
But if you paid attention, Asimov does not really take no for an answer on
This
this.
is your responsibility. You can't just walk away. The Lombaxes need us. Don't walk away from me. I said stop.
Well, crud.
And yeah, just to mention, since of anything all, Ratchet dies. It's not even sure. It's a bit more of a Disney kind of death, but you know they don't really particularly make it doubt. You know, Ratchet gets killed by that shot.
So it's like 06 now, is it?
God, I had to say kinda.
I guess the opposite, since Sonic 06 was technically supposed to be the start of a new era of Sonic, but yeah, when you get down to it, same mentality.
So, one last action with Clank. Don't worry, Sigmund will actually take care of Asimov, believe it or not, as a distraction kind of thing. He can still not, you know,
How
defeat him.
bizarre! All of a sudden he's gone from guy we've been fighting alongside to crazy maniac.
To be fair,
Okay,
Graves,
to be
the
fair-
seeds were there to begin with. He's very obsessed. He has spent a lot of time alone, and more than once already did not accept the whole, you know, no for an answer about using the Great Clock, you know, for going back in time.
Like, yeah, the seeds were there. I do agree, though, that it's a bit weird. He resorts to immediately killing Ratchet instead of, you know, just trying to
Again, I chalked it up to the
incapacitate
fact
at
that he has
least.
been alone too much time.
Open this door, do you hear me?
The clock, much like time itself, is a gift, and not to be tampered with.
Too late.
You think I'd leave my best pal out here alone?
Your father went to great lengths to protect this room from those who would abuse it.
I wouldn't risk
And now Clank must
So,
take a choice.
once again, the plumber saves the situation by having suggested Clank to use the Orvus chamber for just 6 minutes. Which is what is enough to arrive back at this moment.
Okay, just turn it back on him.
We cannot do that. What he can do is to save Ratchet, obviously. Like, of course we were not gonna kill Ratchet.
Okay,
at
just
the end
push
of the
Ratchet
game.
out the way then.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah, like that.
Okay, okay.
By the way, as far as I remember, Clank does not mention having done this to Ratchet. As far as Ratchet is concerned, you know, nothing really happened.
I guess Clank doesn't want to traumatize Ratchet with the truth about his death.
I don't know. It feels
I
it feels the kind of thing that because the two are best buddies, they would say to each other something like this.
in that case, I chalk it up to the rush nature of the game,
Yeah.
like, where they didn't
For
think of that.
a second there, I thought oh, crazy over there. Said, fuck this!
Especially because, unfortunately, similar to the third game, there isn't that much in terms of an epilogue you'll be able to see.
I will say this. Me personally, I probably would have just ended it with the Nefarious fight. I mean, don't get me wrong. The fight with Asimov makes sense, but I feel like a fight with Asimov should have maybe have been the penultimate boss fight, whereas Nefarious is, well, again, the true final villain.
They really wanted to have something climatic and a bit similar to something like, say, Navarro from first Uncharted. The whole, you know, post-final boss thing.
Right.
And yeah, fortunately, this is a problem. So yeah, the real final boss of the game, Alister Asimov himself, Lombax v Lombax. Enjoy, because I kinda didn't. This boss fight kinda sucks because, okay, I don't know if they want to do this for the sake of, you know, scripting it so that you can hear the dialogue, you know, absorb it and it doesn't end too early. But Asimov is either too much of a sponge, or sometimes some of the bullets do not do anything because it just uses its stuff to reflect them, including the Rhino, which shouldn't really be a thing because the Rhino really should be the BMG equivalent. And again,
you know,
it's all for the sake of, you know, having the duel lasting longer, I get it, but I don't know, it really feels to me that they wanted to push it a bit too much for the sake of, you know, having the player enjoy the story rather than having a compelling boss fight. So.
You know, I joked with Nefarious that he's impervious to the Rhino because of his armor, but I'd say that makes more sense than Asimov, who is, you know, a literal biological Lombax being like Ratchet, and yet, oh, Rhino to the face?
Just
sounds like
weave
a
with
Monday.
the staff, you know, casually will swat away the bullets. I mean, let's be real, you know, Lombax technology, which was considered top-notch in the whole universe, so maybe I can believe the fact that, remember, Asimov by his own admission was high in terms of a military command chain. So maybe I can believe that Lombax idealized a technological, you know, staff weapon that could be really that powerful. But I don't know, it just feels to me that if I had the Rhino, I should still be doing more damage than what I did.
Yes, I do agree. Which, I mean, yeah, we get it, maybe it trivializes the final boss, but isn't that why they put it behind that giant paywall anyway?
Anyway, as Asimov himself says, Jova, the whole thing, his whole reasoning was that if he rewinds time, well, Ratchet is gonna be born, you know, anyway, because, you know, Caden will still be alive anyway, so it will be like, you know, nothing really happened, to his perspective, by the way. So
yeah,
he's too far gone with this kind of mentality that he doesn't consider what is there in the present.
Oh yeah, like, that's pretty much my thing. It's like, yeah, I kind of figured his mentality would be, well, time travel, but I did point out that him killing a Lombax when he doesn't even know if this will work for sure really does show how far gone he is. I think I do slightly agree with Dwibs in the sense that I feel like we just needed maybe one more scene showing him going off the deep end before we immediately go to him shooting Ratchet, but otherwise I do agree that the pieces were there overall.
In case you're wondering, no, don't even try the Omni Ranch versus Staff duo. He wins.
Although I will say this, one would think that if he was this far gone, he would have probably just gone ahead and taken the time machine for himself, unless he needed Clank to tell him where it was in the
Yeah, he
first
needed to
place.
know where the Orvus chamber was. That was also Nefarious' plan. And I can't believe, because, you know, you would be thinking, well, if no one can use it, why would Nefarious be so confident in using? Let's not forget that he had his own technology and the Terrachnoids being employed. So there might have been a good chance of his forces to reverse engineer the technology of the Zoni, so they could be actually using it as a time machine. Alright, we're almost done. I don't remember if I tried to use the Groovitron on Asimov or not, to be honest.
Wouldn't that be something with how this is probably the most darkly serious the game has been if you could still use the Groovitron on him.
You're fighting one of your own, so that some crack might...
Alright, we're done.
Everyone else in the process.
Oh, and of course, in order to put it back, the lever is stuck.
What are you doing?
God damn it.
It's not working.
Well, crud, it's broken.
Why isn't it working?
Because it's not a time machine, Alister. The clock isn't meant to alter time, only keep
30 seconds until total system.
Yeah, like we had 6 minutes, but I guess you did it too much.
Yeah, he wanted to go back for whatever years were necessary to the point where the Lombaxes were making the deal with Tachyon.
But it's okay, it's time for him to redeem himself.
Yeah, classic, you know. Again, you can see Asimov entire story arc going on if you know anything about basic storytelling.
I'll admit, I think his arc's done fine enough, but it would have been so much cooler if it had been like over a course of games as opposed to stuck in just one.
Well, if we get a defibrillator, we could...
No, that's not how it works, Wibbs.
He did a brave thing, Ratchet. You should be proud of him.
Despite him trying to kill us.
Yeah,
He tried to kill all of us a minute ago.
It's the classic mentality of, you know, honor, respect, and some shit. We already discussed this in our previous run.
In his final moments, he showed us the hero he once was.
So, oh, right, I forgot we do showcase Ratchet release in the Zoni. My bad.
Timekeeper restored.
I'll leave you two alone.
Alright, so it's time to listen to what was remaining in Orvus's final message to Clank. Because if you paid attention, you can kinda see also what he was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
The clock, much like time itself, is a gift.
I cannot stay. I am sorry, but discovering my family has made me realize that I cannot leave Ratchet. Not until he finds his own. I hope.
So yeah, that's
That's gonna take a while.
Clank is like, well, fuck this shit. I don't want to go to space adventures on my own. You can have the job, Sigmund.
Why aren't I freaking out?
He doesn't even bother listening to what his father had to say. Which, okay, like Tio said, you can probably figure what he was going to, but still, dang.
Thank you, sir.
Take care, Sigmund.
Bye!
So what were Orvus' last words?
The clock, much like time itself, is a gift, and not to be tampered with. But like any father, my only wish is that my son does that which makes him feel whole. You are an intelligent and logical being, Clank. But intelligence and logic would have been wasted gifts without honor and loyalty. I am proud to see you came into those on your own. So, should the clock be too small for your plans, I pray the cosmos light the way towards a future you yourself design. And
I love
remember,
it. It's pretty much, son, this is a very dangerous artifact that could endanger the entire galaxy of being, but do what makes you feel free.
That phrase where he said that the universe has a wonderful sense of humor, that's a callback to what instead Asimov was saying, that for his perspective the universe had a cruel sense of humor, so, you know, callbacks and all. But yeah, that's kind of how it ends. There is a post-credit scene, yes, believe it or not, although it's more in the flavor of what happens in the Rescuers Down Under. If you see that, you kind of know what is coming, but otherwise, that's kind of it. Sure, the final cutscene does have a sense of, oh, the adventure will continue, but, you know, this has the sense of finality of Ratchet and Clank are being let go on their own adventures and all, but I don't know, it still feels kind of weird as weak as the final game in the saga from the perspective that Insomniac had until this point.
Again, I said it before and I'll say it again, even with that ending in mind, I could see it feeling climatic, but I would not guess that this is supposed to be the end. This feels more like a hinting of more things to come, since otherwise the series ends on something of a kind of dour note, like Ratchet losing the only other Lombax, well,
Not to
according to the
mention-
series at this point, since they forgot about Angela, but I digress. Ratchet losing the only other quote-unquote Lombax,
And
essentially.
having the whole thing about, the Lombaxes are, in their place, I should let them go, and I'm like, not really. Like, you shouldn't give up this easily just because of that. In fact, the next couple of games will agree with me on that front.
And also, I guess we would just assume that Nefarious is legit dead now.
He comes back
away.
in the next game immediately.
Which, yeah, of course. Which, well, yeah. I mean, at this point, Nefarious is the big bad of the series. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just like, again, especially now that we know that there are more games afterwards. It feels like an epic adventure. I dare say it could even feel like a movie of the series, but it doesn't feel like a definitive end. It just feels like another chapter in it. Like, I don't know, maybe I'd have been fine if it were the end, but I think I might have been just a little bit disappointed.
Well, what about you, Dweebs? What do you think?
It's fine enough. I guess if you could call this an ending, then you could maybe say that it's like an ending how it means to go on.
Okay, I do have a question for you guys. Do either of you find it just a little bit weird how melodramatic the game gets in like its last 10 or so minutes? Like, yeah, they were technically building up that stuff with Asimov, but holy cow, Ratchet legit dying, and Asimov, an actual biological being, dying like that in a... Well, okay, it's technically kid-friendly, but honestly, all it's missing is some blood to make it a kind of disturbing death, essentially. Like, and it gets, like, surprisingly very deep at the end, even with Clanks' father's touching speech and all that. And again, saying that the series can never have beautiful moments, it's just, I don't think the series has ever felt like this deadly serious before.
Again, I mean, this wouldn't be like the worst ending to a series I've seen. Like, it's like, it's those where, okay, we'll end it here, but then, there's enough leeway to maybe carry on with another game if we feel like it in about 5 years or something.
How long did it take for them to make the next game to you?
I don't remember when All for One was released, but not too long from this. So.
But yeah, All for One came out in 2011, so 2 years after A Crack in Time.
Mm-hmm.
Although, interestingly enough, that one did not have Future added to its title,
it's still a
though,
direct
which
sequel
is
to
weird.
this, so...
Yeah.
Good evening, I'm Kip Darling.
And I'm Pepper Fairbanks.
I recognize this song.
What is it, Dweebs?
It was the ITV news feed they used in 1999.
Good for them. I don't know anything about it.
Someone in America must have come across it on YouTube. I thought, okay, we'll just use this one.
Thanks, Kip. In other news, a giant space station thought to be the lair of the fiendish Dr. Nefarious exploded last night, leaving the Vullards with a ton of salvage work to do. Galactic authorities have yet to recover the remains of Dr. Nefarious or his partner Lawrence. The Polaris Defense Initiative has been mobilized.
Well, that's about it, really. I think it's solid enough.
Sure.
Alright, go on with your final thoughts, Jova.
Oh, it's a good game, you know, it's got good cinematics, it has a relatively fine enough story. Again, my critiques are more so that this does not feel like a truly final game, and I'll admit, I still would probably give the edge to Free over this. Like, I will say, one of my big issues is the lack of continuity, or the fact that characters that we bothered to establish just kind of get put off to the side, like, hey, Ratchet's new girlfriend, the one who literally showed up for Quest for Booty, nope, she's not coming. Ratchet's friends from the previous games, bit cameos, maybe if they're lucky they'll show up on radio, essentially. It's just like, it feels like the opposite of Endgame, which, you know, pulled out all the stops in bringing back old characters and whatnot for continuity's sake and to give a sense of finality. This really does feel like mainly just another chapter of the series. Again, the gameplay seems solid enough, and I do appreciate their dedication to the Groovatron being able to affect everyone. The bosses, for the most part, are fun and varied and well. The visuals are good, except for the bloom.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I don't know, like, maybe on PS3 this looked darker or something?
Well, remember, I recorded it directly from the PS3.
In that case, no then. Why did they make it so bright?
If I can, I will try to check how it is on emulation and, you know, how it can be potentially tweaked, but I cannot make any promises.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's either emulation or some sort of mod to an emulator that lets you tinker with its brightness, but no, actually looking at the normal game itself, was somebody just, you know, incredibly sensitive to the dark, so they had to make it super bright to see? Like, again, we have
a meme at the time. I remember the PlayStation comic magazines that I was purchasing at the time even had mini comic strips in middle, you know, for that, and one of them was parodying the Bloom thing. Anyway, post-credit
scene yeah, no chimps were harmed in the making of this game since
the mutation
monkeys.
weapon for this game, the Chimpatron, I think it's called. Anyway, what happened to Quark?
Hello! Celebrity in need of assistance! What's that, Snowball? Little Jimmy fell down a well? Oh, you're hungry for blood. Oh, I was way off. Let me just... Oh, boy, this is bad. Little help here. Ratchet!
What a shame. He's turned on his friend, Master Quirky Buddy.
And he died.
Hey, easy on the goods!
How's that for an end to the series?
Like I said, it's very similar to, kind of similar to the end of Rescuers Down Under. Anyway,
nope, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there.
Don't worry, like
he
I
also
said,
comes back.
He literally becomes Galactic President in between games. That's as it's mentioned in the comic.
Yeah, no, like, the lens flare is bad enough to make, I dare say, even J.J. Abrams blush, because there are some bits where, in the areas that are already bright, the lens flare brightens it up to the point where it looks like the collectibles are tough to see because of how much lens flare there is, essentially. And, again, like many questions, I must ask, why? Just why? Like, and again, maybe if I'm putting on my tinfoil hat, this might have been a mandate to make it more cinematic, which that was a kick Sony were getting on at the time. But hey, you know, just equip a few sunglasses and you'll be just fine, I'm sure. All joking aside, again, this seems like another good fine Ratchet & Clank installment. My scrutiny comes to take it to task when it was supposedly meant to be the end, the grand finale, which, okay, I'll admit that final scene with Azimuth in the last 10 or so minutes does give a sense of finality, especially with how big scope and scale it gets. But that's the thing, it kind of feels like a little pocket in and of itself. It's like if, again, for an MCU comparison, imagine if, say, most of a movie was just the first Avengers movie, but then in the last 20 or so minutes, it becomes Endgame to suddenly go, oh, no, this is actually meant to be the true end, guys. Again, though, like, look, I can't harp on it too much since they brought it back 2 years later anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if, by the time this game even made it out the door, they already got calls from some higher up or
Only when it came
whoever
out, because
decided.
apparently it was in response to the fact that the game got critically appraised and sold a lot.
So either they saw dollar signs or they figured, you know what, we have some more in us after seeing the good reception, which, I can get and see how that would be motivating. The characters, again, are their usual selves here. I'll admit, while I do joke about how some of his development got a bit herky-jerky, I actually do legit like the inclusion of Asimov. I don't know if we really should have had him be killed at the end, since that kind of does feel like that War of the Superman arc in DC where, oh, sorry, Superman, you really gotta be the last Kryptonian aside from Supergirl, so, all these other Kryptonians, yeah, they're either out, Phantom Zoned, or dead, essentially.
More than that, Jova, I think it was more of a case similar to what a lot of my thought process are in terms of dealing with villains, having the whole being killed by their own hubris and their own actions. I know that it's a way to also have Ratchet being a bit more squeaky clean in terms of, having his hands less stained in blood, especially of his own kind, but, it's another thing of basic storytelling when you get down to it.
I will say this, though. I'm fine with Asimov dying. I just would have rather maybe had his arc and descent into villainy maybe last over a few games, essentially, since it seemed like there was potential for him. I do get the semblance that, if this wasn't supposed to be the last game, they probably would have let him stick around for a few more games, but since it was set to be the end, he had to die. Again, though, I will say this overall, in spite of my critiques, this seems like a perfectly good game that I could recommend getting. I will say the only legit problem I feel is that, ironically, unless you play Quest for Booty, the reveal that Nefarious is behind everything will kind of come off as anticlimactic since the start of the game really assumes that you did get the more dramatic reveal in Quest for Booty, which is, yeah, a bit of a flaw in the sense that you could tell that they were banking on people getting it when it was obviously more accessible then than it might be now. Still available maybe for like $15 or so, but like we covered in Quest for Booty, I feel that's a bit overpriced for what Quest for Booty does, but I digress essentially. Crack in Time is a good game, a good installment, but it doesn't feel like it really cuts the mustard as a finale, so it's not a finale. Which, hey, it doesn't have that pressure anymore, so what you gonna do? Tio, your final thoughts?
Yeah, this again is a fine game, just hampered a bit by, ironically enough, the time that has aged. Not necessarily in terms of thematics, but more in terms of technical department and storytelling. Again, taking it in its own accord, it's another typical episode that happens in the Ratchet and Clank universe, and honestly, technically a good way of capping off what was started in Tools of Destruction, but kind of as a, not stepping stone, but checkpoint. It really does feel that more stuff should be happening after this, regardless of, what they did, decided, and what not. So, again, the fact that they were considering this to be the endpoint baffles me to no end, especially because they did not bother to have a proper, complete epilogue to match up that kind of statement. There are also all the moments where the game wants to have the cake and eat it too by establishing clear rules about how time travel worked and should not work in this universe, but then bending those same rules by twisting a bit for the sake of having cool set pieces, which, yes, do provide some neat gameplay variety, but it kind of feels that it should be more elaborated upon. Much like with the Dimensionator and the Lombaxes, it's clear that the game wants to have the arc where Clank understands what Orvus wanted from him, but at the same time chooses of his own accord instead of bending to the will of parenthood, which honestly is a good message overall, because, there have been a lot of ever since the dawn of time has been a lot of contention about how much parenthood should be considered in terms of moving forward, and how much of that in storytelling is a parallel to authorities controlling people. And again, Clank at the end of the day deciding a bit of A and a bit of B is actually a good compromise. And at the end of the day, just him, choosing to be with Ratchet still manages to align a bit with what Orvus wanted. So it's all, good and fun. Which also reminds me of something that I haven't talked about. The cutscene where Nefarious was torturing Orvus and he just teleports away. I don't know what you guys got out of that, especially the first time it happened, but in case you're wondering, TJ Fixman had to say this on social media that Orvus is technically not dead, but apparently just time stranded somewhere else. So that's another plot point that they did not bother to put, which leads me to the other thing about this sense of finality. I think that I hammered way too much. The fact that a lot of the arcs initiated both in the original tetralogy and in this future saga, particularly Tolwyn, are just completely gone or left hanging. It's nice that we get to hear about characters like Big Al, thanks to the radio chatter. So, to understand what are we doing now. But again, Tolwyn is so egregious to me, especially because her father arc is so integral to the whole Lombax going to a different dimension to escape and also to learn the whereabouts of Angela. I really pray that the next game that is supposed to be in development finally contributes to that, because I'm so sick and tired of Tolwyn to be put on behind the scenes and only be remembered to just being a part of the universe without being too much of a fuss about, in order to maybe push another new character. But aside from that, I like the voice acting. I do like how most of the characters are presented. Even Asimov's arc, as predictable as it is, it's serviceable, enough. And honestly, I don't remember hearing that much of Joy Doria as a villain. He mostly tends to play side characters that are more in a positive light, or when it comes to protagonists, like say horror Puss in Boots in a horrible bootleg animated version of a story. It's a long tale, but don't think I remember hearing him that much as a villain. So it works out kind of like as Asimov, showcasing his weakness and his tragedy at the end of the day. Of course, Lawrence and Nefarious are still a blast to be had. Although, as you can imagine, if you notice, they kind of tone it down a bit. The running gag of Nefarious glitching out and Lawrence being super snarky with him, it's a bit more balanced compared to how it was in the third game. And spoiler alert, it kind of will continue this kind of downward trend to the point where in Rift Apart, because Lawrence is absent, most of the running gags tied to Nefarious are gone, unfortunately. But it's a story for another time. Again, even Quark is fine for the most part. Sure, his plot is also still left a bit hanging, but I'm fine with it. And if you take the advice that this was the last game and he just dies at the end, it's kind of morbidly hilarious when you think about it. But, it's up to you to decide. I like, in terms of gameplay, I really like the arsenal, as I said. Mr. Zurkon could use a bit more power, admittedly, but otherwise, most of the rest of the arsenal is fine. Like I said, the Rift generator is a bit contentious, because instead of actually generating the black hole that sucks everything, it just has the Lovecraftian monster picking up things in a stationary position, and a lot of people apparently did not like that, which I kind of understand, but I kind of like the innovation in the weapon. So if there was another one that also had the classic effect of the original Rift inducer, might have helped on that. The platforming is fine for the most part. The game makes you really feel the absence of Clank for the most part, but then after you get him, collecting everything on the mini asteroids and everything is actually very satisfying. I did not show it because, again, it's not really super compelling to show that much, but it is a good time. And again, completing this game 100% is a good time. So at the end of the day, it does the job it's supposed to do as a game. So I appreciate it for that. So, I think that's pretty much it. So that's it for the initial saga of the future, part of the franchise. When we'll come back, it will be for All for One, or, as Insomniac wanted to originally call it, Foursome. Yes, really, that was the original title. I don't know, still don't know how much I'm gonna summarize the comic, because, again, fuck if I want to actually showcasing it entirely, because it just looks butt ugly, and I can easily sum it up in 10 minutes tops. Anyway, that's it for the main game. Tune in for the next part, where we go through the extra section, including the post-game stuff. Yes, there is actual post-game content, and the Insomnia Museum. See you for that.
See you then.